Hey guys, I'm Whitney, a personal injury attorney on a mission to help you make safer and more informed decisions about beauty. After representing women harmed by dangerous cosmetic products and procedures, I have realized that the beauty industry is full of dangerous risks and side effects that are unknown and not talked about enough. On each episode, we'll dive into all the latest beauty trends and discuss how we can stay safe in a sea of potions and procedures promising youth and beauty. We will explore real-life stories, legal insights, and advice from the experts. From Botox to BBLs to toxic products in your makeup bag, we're going to talk about it all. My goal is for you to leave every episode with the information that you need to stay safe, beautiful, and informed. You're listening to the Beauty Justice Podcast. Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of the Beauty Justice Podcast. I have with me today Spencer Sheehan, who is a consumer and class action attorney who has made headlines for filing some controversial lawsuits against many companies for the deceptive marketing of their products. He most recently made headlines for filing a lawsuit against Sephora, claiming that items in their clean beauty section aren't really that clean. I am so excited for today's episode, so let's get into it. Spencer, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here today.
Good morning, Whitney. Thank you for having me.
So I want to just kind of start off today by having you introduce yourself and just give us a little bit of information about your background and how it is that you came to be doing this type of work that you're doing, fighting against these companies and their deceptive marketing practices.
Well, thank you. My name is Spencer Sheehan, and I'm an attorney in New York. And the work that I do is, as you mentioned, on behalf of consumers. Now, I've been a lawyer for about 11 years, but it was only really in the past 5 or 6 years that I've started to do this work exclusively. And the reason why this has been something that is important to me is because for as long as I can remember, even when I was a child, I was always the type to be annoyed and unhappy when I didn't get, what I was expecting, whether it was a box of candy that was half full, and you know how kids love candy, or whether it was a video game system that maybe it didn't come with the controllers. Who would think, that that's something possible? Obviously, my exposure to beauty products, or I shouldn't say obviously, but nevertheless, my exposure to beauty products wasn't until, after childhood, and in the context of the other consumer types of claims. And you begin to learn more and see what's out there and see what I believe is, the significant amount of deception with respect to cosmetics and personal care products. And that's something that's, not appreciated by so many of the public who spend their hard-earned money and want to make choices that are consistent with their values and what they want to apply and put on their bodies.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually come from a product liability background, mostly handling asbestos related cases. And so we started filing a lot of suits based on talc related, body powder, makeup claims. And so that really started to kind of freak me out a little bit and made me go into my bathroom and start looking through all of the products that were in my makeup bag and, dry shampoo and shampoo, hair care, all of the products. I mean, women use so many different beauty products every single day. And so I first started with just talc, and I'm looking through everything like, okay, this has talc, this has talc, this has talc, like, oh my gosh. And then that sort of led me into looking into all of the different chemicals and different things that were in some of the other products that I was using. And I started to just kind of go down this rabbit hole, and I really realized how many harmful chemicals are in the products that we're using every day. And I had absolutely no idea. And I think that consumers are getting a little bit more savvy with this, and we're starting to want more products that are clean, right? We don't want these toxic chemicals. We don't want these
hormone disrupting chemicals in our makeup and in our cosmetics. But when you start to try and figure out, okay, well, which chemicals are actually bad, which chemicals are okay, what is actually clean, what is not clean, it gets very, very overwhelming, and it gets very stressful to try to figure that out. So I was really interested in having you on today to talk about your lawsuit that you filed against Sephora and their clean beauty line, because this is something that I get questions about this all the time. People DMing me like, hey, what do you think about the, clean products at Sephora? Is this product clean? Is this product clean? So can you just tell us a little bit about your lawsuit against Sephora and, kind of what you actually were alleging against the company?
Well, that's a great question. And what we were alleging in the Sephora case was that it appeals to so many of these consumers like you who unfortunately realize that, the government regulations as to what is okay in beauty and cosmetics products are unfortunately limited. And that's why companies like Sephora go a few steps beyond what the government's required. But, and ostensibly it's to give us as consumers more information. And then specifically here, they were telling us that, particular products, whether eye care products, facial care products are, what most people would consider to be free of harmful and potentially dangerous and unnecessary chemicals under their Clean at Sephora program. And I think, clean is a term that so many consumers of beauty products understand in a consistent way because clean means, the beauty, as Sephora said, the beauty you want minus the ingredients you might not. And, while they did say that, those clean products perhaps, didn't have certain ingredients like parabens and sulfates, they also unfortunately had other ingredients. And, so many of those other ingredients are made in a way that's quite harmful, or, that are made in a synthetic way or made in a way that's not environmentally sustainable. And unfortunately, by marketing, these products as clean at Sephora, it really is, I thought something that, while perhaps well-intentioned, at the same time doesn't give the public all of the information. And there were several ingredients, as were alleged in that case, that weren't clean by any stretch of the imagination. Even, according to studies done by industry with respect to the ingredients in those products, were known to be harmful or potentially, liable to cause negative effects on people, especially those with sensitive skin and, along with a number of other potential long-term issues. So, it's an important issue. And, it's something that we're seeing across a range of companies and products.
Right. You just said that there were around 7 ingredients that they allow in their clean line that are actually, possibly harmful. Did I hear that correct?
Well, I'll be more specific. They're, clean products, according to their definition, basically means that they exclude certain ingredients. Now, those ingredients, for instance, are parabens, are sulfates, mineral oils, formaldehyde. But as you and your audience knows, so Whitney, there are so many other ingredients and components of cosmetic and personal care products that are known to be, unfortunately, just as potentially harmful as those products it claims, or those ingredients that suppose that the Clean at Sephora program disclaims. So really, by limiting the universe to one, maybe about 5 or 6 ingredients, but yet allowing all of the other ingredients that are, known to be harmful, and even are known to be, just as harmful as those it claims not to use. it does a disservice to consumers who are trying to make better choices. And it also gives them a false sense of confidence that they don't need to look further than the clean at Sephora. They don't need to, check for themselves through websites or through, podcasts and other media sources like yours. And unfortunately, a lot of the time, they might be doing themselves a disservice from not doing their own research.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's just, it's so hard when you do start looking into all of this, because, there is no standardized definition, right, of what is clean. There isn't like some kind of government standard that says, these are the chemicals that need to be excluded and these are the ones that are allowed. And, we actually have very, very differing standards from like the EU. They've banned thousands and thousands of chemicals compared to here in the US. I think that there's like 12 on the list. So while it seems like these companies are, doing something good by eliminating at least some of the harmful chemicals, if you look at the list of things that are banned in places like the clean line at Sephora or even Target now, they have their own clean section. It's just, there's a couple things on the list. It's not this extensive list of chemicals that we see in other countries. So it just makes it really, really hard for the consumer to figure out what the heck we should be buying. And it gets really overwhelming when you start looking into it all, because it just seems like, how am I supposed to know what's okay and what's not? So what happened with your lawsuit? So this was a class action lawsuit, right?
That's correct. It started as, what's described as, I'm sure you know, Whitney, as a proposed class action. And that means that, we're asking the court to treat all purchasers of Sephora products under the Clean at Sephora together as a group and benefit everybody by hopefully a positive outcome. So it started in that way.
And then
I'll tell you what happened.
Yeah, what happened?
Well, unfortunately, and this really gets to the issue that we're discussing here today, Whitney, and also the issue that you've raised, which is because it is so hard for consumers to make sense of all this, and because there are no regulations about what clean means, the court unfortunately didn't agree with the complaint and didn't agree, unfortunately, that there was anything misleading. And the reason why, unfortunately, was because just, didn't believe the general allegations that, these were the types of claims, such as clean at Sephora, along with their list of ingredients that they promote as not being in, their certain cosmetic products bearing those labels and approvals. It found, unfortunately, that, there was nothing deceptive about that. I strongly disagreed with that opinion. And it's why more regulations and a stronger government enforcement is needed, because, that's one way where hopefully there can be a promotion of fairness and honesty to consumers, and they won't have to rely on companies voluntarily ascribing attributes to their products that those products don't have.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really important to just point out, because, a lot of the news headlines that I saw after the case was dismissed kind of said things like Sephora, case closed against Sephora, Sephora, has had this kind of victory. And I think that those headlines could lead people to think that, well, the case was dismissed because the clean line is actually clean. And that's not why the court dismissed the case. The court basically just dismissed the case because they said, well, these are the ingredients that Sephora says they don't include in their line. And, that is accurate. So if somebody else thinks that it means that they're not using synthetic, chemicals or some of these other harmful things, that's on them. The Sephora has laid out what they don't include and what they do include. And am I kind of correct on explaining that?
That's absolutely right. And often when we see these headlines, they're basically, because they are headlines and intended to summarize a larger story, the headlines would say that, yes, this case against Sephora was dismissed. But as you correctly pointed out, it was not dismissed because the court evaluated Sephora's labeling and evaluated whether or not its Clean at Sephora program was misleading. All it did was basically say that, it disagreed that regular consumers of beauty products, when they see, the words clean and that describe their products in that way, that they shouldn't expect that term to mean anything more than whatever limited definition or terms that a company ascribes to it. But, I think that that's problematic, and that's also not consistent with how regular purchasers of beauty products understand such claims for a lot of reasons. Most significantly, the fact that a lot of times people may just see the large, bold-faced clean, and the ingredients that Sephora excludes, that's in smaller print. And I think it's normal to see terms like clean and to expect that there are no other non-clean ingredients, or at least that there are very few in an absolute or relative amount, very few non-clean ingredients in those products, because the program is called Clean at Sephora.
Right. Can you explain to the audience kind of, when we hear these terms like natural, or, some of these different things like green, do those terms mean anything when it comes to what it means for, I guess, the chemicals that are in these products?
Unfortunately, to start with, natural has very little meaning in the context of cosmetic products. And that's for several reasons. First, because companies trying to compete with each other against other companies, they're going to do many things in order to sell more of their products. So there's an incentive to use the term natural to describe cosmetic products, yet to include ingredients like glycerol and other preservatives that are not in fact natural, because they're made through chemical processes using all sorts of solvents and chemical reactions. And that's the first thing. And the second thing is there are no regulations, unfortunately. As you pointed out, the cosmetic sector in our country is significantly, in my opinion, behind what it is in the European Union, not only with respect to evaluation and allowance of certain ingredients to be on the market, but also in terms of the lack of regulations for key terms. And it leads to companies pushing the envelope about, such terms like natural. And that's very important to consumers of beauty products, because these are things that you're applying on and, to your body. And you have to, have confidence that those labels mean something. And it's very important, and that, natural mean what most consumers think. And that's, while a complicated term, I don't think it's a stretch to expect something natural. It's free of synthetic or artificial chemicals, and that is made in a way that is natural relative to, the particular use. Obviously, a bar of soap doesn't grow in a garden. So there's going to, have to be some processes that occur in order to make the bar of soap. But nonetheless, there's, certainly an area where companies can formulate, and I'm not a chemist, but they can certainly make, products that are natural or, to the greatest extent possible, can be made in a way that's consistent with how consumers of beauty products will expect for products bearing those labels. And with respect to, claims like green, that's another one which unfortunately companies are using in order to cause the public to buy their products. And there's very little regulation. And it's unfortunate, especially as more and more want to do their part in making environmentally conscious choices to contribute to hopefully roll back the harmful effects of human activity on the environment.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of harmful effects on the environment, I just saw that you actually filed a new lawsuit against Big Lots for some allegations regarding their sunscreen. And I know that this is something, within the kind of clean beauty community that is talked about, is, sort of the effect that certain sunscreens, chemicals in certain sunscreens can have on the coral reefs. And so I saw that you had filed that lawsuit, and I wanted to just kind of talk to you a little bit about that. Can you tell us a little bit about that suit and what that's all about?
Absolutely, yes. So this case against Big Lots was filed about their sunscreen product, and what we were alleging there is that their sunscreens that they sell to consumers, while it's marketed as being reef-conscious, it actually contains numerous ingredients which are not only not reef-conscious, but reef harmful. And it's unfortunate, especially because, well, our coral reefs are one of the most diverse and important ecosystems to all of, civilization. Oceans make up something like 75% of Earth's landmass, and coral reefs are responsible for, I don't recall exactly, but perhaps a quarter of all marine activity. And
Wow.
these are such important ecosystems which support our environment, support the world's oceans. And when humans wear, these sunscreen products with, of course, the best intentions for ourselves and protecting us, we don't realize, or at least until several years ago, we didn't know that what we were doing had a very detrimental impact on, the world around us. And while some companies and while, some states, notably Hawaii, have been at the forefront of trying to protect these natural resources, unfortunately, companies, while they may have had the, positive intentions, they were very quick to promote their products as being beneficial towards reefs. Now, that has a few harmful effects, but most notably, it causes people to get a false sense of comfort that by buying this sunscreen, that, they don't need to take other environmental measures, other things that we might otherwise want to do. Like, for instance, buying a sunscreen that wasn't based on chemicals, but perhaps based on minerals. So it's really something unfortunate that it isn't just Big Lots, but it's all of the, major sunscreen companies that have, attempted to do this, to capitalize on our demand, not just for products that are clean, because, they define sunscreen in this circumstance is free of certain ingredients. And certainly those ingredients are, not clean, but also as being beneficial and certainly not harmful to reef ecosystem.
Right. Yeah, and it's such a disservice to the consumers who, like I said earlier, we're getting a lot more savvy, and we're looking at the labels on the things that we're buying, and everybody has their different things that they're passionate about or protecting, or the things that they care about. For some people, it's clean beauty. For some people, it might be the environment. For a lot of people, it's both. And when you are picking up a product in the store and it says that it's made of all natural ingredients and it's, reef conscious, whatever that means, you just kind of see that. And everybody doesn't have time to do a deep dive and learn, memorize a glossary of chemicals, right? And be able to know what every single one of those chemicals means and whether it's good or
You're you're
whether it's
exa-
bad.
you're exactly right, Whitney. While listeners of your podcast might know a little bit more, the typical purchaser, whether it's a mom or a teenager, you're not going to have a scientific manual with you, and even then, it's going to be real hard to get the truth. And it's unfortunate that companies take these steps and do so and not give the full information to
Right.
buyers.
Why do you think class action lawsuits, like the type of suits that you file, are important? Because I think that a lot of people kind of, maybe their whole knowledge of a class action lawsuit is you might get a piece of paper in the mail, like fill this out, you might be entitled to compensation, and it might be, $3 or something like that. And most people are like, I'm not even going to waste my time with that. I'm going to throw this in the trash.
And
But you keep filing these cases against a lot of these companies, and you seem like you're very passionate about it. Why do you think these types of lawsuits are important?
You describe most people's reactions, I think, quite accurately, even sometimes my reaction when I receive those types of notices. But I think what you may know is that these types of cases, while, a benefit is obviously to give, people back, whatever is possible, a lot of the benefit is to enforce or to promote a sense of market fairness. So while, some might see a benefit as being giving people back $3 or giving, 100,000 people back $3, the main purpose, I believe, is to create a marketplace where there's enforcement, where companies know that they will be held accountable. And of course, when this is done by private attorneys, as opposed to, the state and federal level enforcement agencies, whether it's the Federal Trade Commission or the attorneys general, it's still one way that we can, as the public, seek to hold companies to a level of honesty. And I believe that that is perhaps, even the primary benefit of a class action, not necessarily, whether or not the individuals who bought sunscreen get, 50 cents, back in the mail, or whether or not, somebody might get a coupon for a free, a free lipstick or something because what they bought was mislabeled. The general goal is, or one of the most important goals and benefits is that, it's a way to tell companies that they shouldn't do this. And if, they continue, consumers don't like it, and we're going to do our best to stop it. And I can say honestly that, that's the most significant effect I've seen. It's not, unfortunately, for better or worse, in terms of the money that's given out, because you're right. Most people aren't going to bother to fill out a form that might give them $1.50 in 6 months. But the best, outcome is when, as a result of these cases, companies, even though they often won't admit it, they'll take a hard look at what they were saying that caused that lawsuit to be filed. And most likely they're going to change that. And they're going to step back, and they're going to be a little bit more truthful. And they're not going to push the envelope. And while that technically should be the role of the government agencies, the law allows that to be something that's done by private attorneys, much different than in other countries. And that's why class actions in the United States are important, not just for, the labeling of cosmetics, but for the very important issues that you had involvement in, Whitney, about talc and the other products, which do more, unfortunately, than just tricking people out of a few dollars, but cause mesothelioma, cancer, all sorts of other harmful issues. And that's why class actions, even though, of course, I realize people may roll their eyes and say, well, the lawyers are just going to get everything, and how do I benefit? I I don't necessarily disagree with that perception, but it's also somewhat narrow-minded, or it's a little bit narrow in that it ignores the, market positive effects that accrue as a result of these types of cases.
Yeah, no, I just like to point that out because, lawyers, we get a bad reputation a lot of the time for, some of the cases that we file and some of the things that we do. And I just think that it's important to point out, even though sometimes some of these lawsuits might seem, silly or frivolous, they're really not. And it's really, in some cases, the only way to kind of check these big corporations, because if you give them free reign, I mean, they're going to do whatever they want. I mean, they do whatever they want to do anyway. But if there is absolutely no check on their behavior, whether it's marketing, whether it's the actual chemicals that they're putting in their products that are harming people, there has to be some kind of accountability. And unfortunately, the FDA isn't always holding them accountable. There's, the regulations around a lot of these things are just so loose. And so, a lot of times the lawsuit is the only way to, one, bring public awareness to what's going on. And two, to just really to force change, because a lot of times when some of these things are brought to the light of the consumer, then the consumer can start making different decisions and go, oh, this sunscreen that they're advertising as reef conscious is not actually reef conscious. They're lying to me. They're deceiving me. So I am going to now do my research and I'm going to go buy a product that actually is reef conscious, that, is not deceptively, advertising to me. So I think that these types of lawsuits are really important. And I think that the work that you do is very interesting. I've never been involved in a class action, but I obviously follow along with a lot of them. And so I just wanted to kind of point out why they are important for people that might not really understand the importance of a class action lawsuit. So if we want to ever get to some kind of uniform definition of what is clean, what is your opinion on what should be done? Like how do we even get there? Do we need some kind of regulations passed? What is your opinion on how we can sort of forge a better future in this whole clean beauty mess that we're in the middle of right now?
Well, the first thing I think that's, important, and one of the things that us as Americans can do is to contact our federal representatives, whoever they may be. There has been a relative flurry of activity in the area of modernizing the rules for cosmetic regulations over the past few years. Several legislative initiatives have been introduced at the federal level that would modernize and update these regulations and would account for certain terms like natural and give them definitions which had to be complied with. Now, I haven't seen legislative initiatives that address the word clean, but I know that, looking at this at the federal level and from our elected representatives, that's one place we can start. Another place is the regulatory agency which oversees these issues, and that is, of course, the Food and Drug Administration. Their ability to take action while they have authority sometimes might be limited by the laws that are in place, but it's definitely some place where we can give our 2 cents as consumers. And we can tell these agencies and our elected officials that these issues are important to us. And it's important also, perhaps the most important, for people to continue to learn and educate themselves through media outlets and podcasts like yours, because the amount of information that we have, while it's a blessing in terms of giving us more information, it also can be very overwhelming, especially trying to figure out what's true and not, about which blog that might talk about a product may be written by somebody perhaps who received, a free product and has an incentive to not. Unlike I know from, your involvement in the media, may not give consumers and beauty purchasers the full information. So it's so hard for us, even those who want to be informed, to get the full information. But hopefully there will be a continued effort to increase everybody's knowledge through programs like yours and, the numerous others in the media ecosystem, the new media ecosystem, to increase transparency and promote an environment of truthfulness and ingredients and cosmetics that are not just, beneficial to our bodies, but also to the planet.
Yeah, I think I agree with all of that. Do you have any advice for the consumers right now in terms of, knowing what products to buy and what products not to buy, aside from really kind of what you just said, doing your own research and figuring out what you think is clean and what is not? Are there any resources or anything that you've come across that you think might help the consumer determine that? Or
well, that's a great question. And, so much of this is, real complicated. Certainly much more complicated than I, who's not a chemist, is able to understand. I try to, make use of, the online resources that are available. One of the websites, and I'm not, trying to promote any websites or anything. I don't get, anything for it. But I'll often see, for instance, whenever I do my own research, not just as a lawyer, but as a consumer, I'll often come across the website of a group called the Environmental Working Group. And they'll, do a pretty good job. I think, I'm not, passing judgment on this organization, but it seems to be a pretty good resource in terms of, giving consumers more information about what they know about certain ingredients. Now, it's not going to be comprehensive. Nothing is, because science is always changing and that, it's evolving. But I've found that to be, a good resource for people. And it's one of the places. And of course, the work that you do, Whitney, I think that's, another place where consumers would be well advised to check and to see if you, or, the many colleagues of yours and the many folks who are bringing these issues to light and trying to get the, accurate information out to purchasers who want to do right by themselves and the planet.
Right. Yeah, I think that EWG, they have an app for anybody who hasn't heard of it. It's the EWG app, Environmental Working Group. They have an app where you can go in and type in pretty much any beauty product. They even have products for your home, like cleaning products and things like that. I mean, you can go in there and kind of search their database. I don't think that it's perfect, but I think that it's a really good place to start, especially if you're new to kind of looking into toxic chemicals in your home. It can give you it's something that I use a lot if I'm just at the store and I'm looking at something new and I don't have time to really look at every single ingredient. Well, maybe pull up my EWG app and just kind of run it through there and see what kind of score it gets. And it typically will tell you, any problematic chemicals or ingredients in there, what the potential problem is, if it's linked to cancer, or if it's an endocrine disruptor or whatever. So I think that is definitely a really good place to start. Well, I really appreciate you being on today. I think that this was really informative. I really liked learning a little bit more about the Sephora lawsuit, and I think that the listeners are going to be really interested to hear about this because, like I said, I get questions about that all the time. So thank you so much for being here, and I will be watching the news to see what you do next, because I see your name popping up in a lot of news headlines. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk with you and your audience.
Thanks. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Beauty Justice Podcast. For more content like this, follow along with me on Instagram @BeautyJusticeWit. If you want to switch to toxin-free makeup but you're not sure where to start, get my free guide, Clean Up Your Makeup, today by clicking the link in my bio or visiting my website at beautyjustice.com. I'll see you next time. The contents of this podcast are for informational and educational purposes only. Nothing you hear should be construed as legal or medical advice.